Okay, and we are live. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the very last webinar in 2023 for CFO Connect. And we've got a very special one talking about a topic that everybody loves and adores and thinks about all the time, and that is the topic of tooling. So for those of you who are new to CFO Connect, CFO Connect is a global community of more than 10,000 finance leaders, and it's powered by Spendesk, which is a spend management platform. We put on webinars like this. We have resources, we run reports, we have an online Slack space. So all kinds of different ways for all of you to connect, exchange, and level up your finance knowledge. So as I said, today we have a very important topic, especially going into 2024. And I'm here with Paul, who will give us a breakdown and insights on his view in tooling, show us his tool stack at Aircall. So without further ado, I wanted to pass it over to Paul. Paul, can you give us a quick intro of who you are, what you do, and anything about tooling?
Sure. Thank you, Luke. First off, thank you for having me, and thank you to CFO Connect and Spendesk. It's a pleasure to be here today. So my name is Paul Mondollot. I'm the VP of FP&A at Aircall, which is a cloud phone system for professionals, so specifically for sales functions and customer support department, and also a Centaur since 2022. So prior to Aircall, I actually come from an engineering background, studied mathematics, passionate about numbers. Went into the automotive industry to be a financial controller for 5 years, multiple countries, before I landed at Aircall around 6 years ago. So right after Series B, when the company was way smaller, and this is where I had the opportunity to work on different roles, FP&A, head of the finance projects, and also director of corporate finance before going back to FP&A. So why am I talking to you, I guess, today? Because working in FP&A, maybe this is what could be interesting. So because I was joining Aircall so quickly, I had the opportunity to work for around 2 years, a little bit more, on the finance projects, and more specifically, finance tools. So this is why we're talking today, right? Implementing most of the tools in finance that we have currently at Aircall. And I'll talk a little bit more about this. And overall, having experience in implementing, ERPs, billing solutions, tax systems, and also I happen to be passionate about this. So yeah, again, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So before we get into the heart of it, wanted to do a bit of housekeeping. So there is a Q&A tab section on your right-hand side where you can ask questions. We'll have a dedicated Q&A section at the end so that Paul will answer all your questions live. And this replay will be sent to you via email after the webinar, so you can watch it at your own leisure in the coming days when you're on holiday with your family. I'm sure they'll enjoy it as well. So before we get into it, we do have a poll question for you. So we will open the poll, and so you'll see on the right-hand side, there is a question that asks, what type of tool will you invest in the most time and money in for 2024? So please go ahead, answer it. This will help us to see what kind of tools you guys are leaning towards. And it also help Paul to kind of shape his answers to know what the audience is interested in when it comes to tooling for 2024. So as we look at the results in real time, it looks like accounting and ERP, 50% of you right now are answering that. And then cash management is the second with 25%. Is that typically what you would see, Paul, in terms of like priorities in terms of tooling?
Interesting. So accounting, ERP for sure. Treasury, cash management, I'm a bit surprised, but cash is king is 2023, so maybe that's why. Also, usually the type of tools people are interested in depends on the size and maturity of the company. So I think it's very interesting. See a few people on the EPM as well, planning tool. So this is not too surprising. Not too many people payroll, BI. Interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. So With that said, let's go into the heart of the discussion. So what I will do now is I will throw on the screen the Aircall tool stack. I hope everybody will be able to see this. Please let me know if you can. Okay, actually, I think we're good. In the chat, can you just let us know that the diagram is fully displayed and that it's clear? Would love to make sure that you guys are seeing it in its beauty before Paul rolls in. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Nikolai. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Alejandra. Okay, so the first question, Paul, is going to be quite a basic one. It's, can you just walk me through the tool stack, give us an overview, and give us an understanding how each tool is complementary to the other?
Of course, of course. So first off, I mean, this is only the finance tool stack. I think everybody understood this. And also it's a simplified view because we have a ton of tiny small tools that didn't want to incorporate this. So this is kind of the global picture. I think something that you'll notice is that front and center, you have a big box with NetSuite and different modules that are part of NetSuite. So NetSuite is very central to our tool stack today, and I'll come back to this. Also, what you may notice is I try to split the tools by process. So most of them are for O2C, or order to cash. We have a couple ones as well on P2P, some on banking or cash management, and a ton of other. So maybe it's either analytics or HR. So I did incorporate the HR IS just because it's so integral in having, building part of a reporting that is then being connected into our EPM. So maybe I will start on first process where you have the most boxes, which is order to cash. And I'll do a quick digression here to explain that the order to cash at Aircall is kind of complicated because you have high volume, of small customers worldwide. So almost 20,000 customers in 100 countries with the invoices that are complicated, different products. We have, I think, over 1,000 SKUs into the systems, hence why we invested massively in this. So starting from the left, you have Salesforce CPQ. So this is configure price quote, where all the sales reps and the CSMs, they basically build quotes and contracts that are then being sent to the Aircall stack for provisioning, meaning granting access to customers, and being sent to NetSuite to create the subscriptions. And then thanks to Zone Advanced Billing, this is how we compute and create the invoices, customer invoices. Then still on the O2C on the top left, you have all the PSPs, so payment service providers. At Aircall, we accept payments by credit card, direct debit, and also bank transfer being fully offline. So what is cool here is that GoCardless and ProcessOut are connected to NetSuite. So there's the bidirectional connector where 100% of our payments are fully automated. You trigger the payment within ProcessOut or GoCardless. Then the payment, if it's being validated, creates a payment object within NetSuite, reconciling the invoices, etc., etc. On the O2C also, we have, you'll notice maybe on the top right, Avalara. So this is to compute taxes in the US, similarly fully automated. So this is for order to cash, where also we have the Dunning to send letters to customers and the advanced revenue management module within NetSuite to compute the revenue recognition. All of this being almost 100% fully automated end-to-end. Then we have P2P, only a couple tools, one of them being Fast Forward. This is the OCR to integrate the bills easier. We have Navan for expense management, for travel. We used to have Spendex, by the way. And then we consolidated all of the expenses tool within Navan. And then we have the banking system at the top, the 3 banks to address all of our needs in all the countries. You'll see as well there's a connector with JP Morgan, where from NetSuite, we're able to trigger all the payments automatically with a set of other approval flows as well that is being managed in JP Morgan. And last but not least, the bottom right, you have the HR system and all the analytics tools that are being connected to Adaptive Insight, which is our EPM solution. So here you'll notice one thing as well, is that some lines are dotted between, for example, Bamboo HR, Adaptive Insights, and those are the manual flows, meaning manual imports that we're doing on a monthly basis. And this is a perfect segue to say that this system, I think, works pretty well overall, pretty happy about this. Definitely room for improvement in terms of data flows and in terms of systems that need to be improved. So this is not meant to be a look at how this is, best in class, nothing to improve, but rather to give you some kind of insights on how we're operating at Aircall.
Great, thank you for that overview. So let's dive a bit deeper. When would you say is the right time to implement a tool, and what is the best way to prioritize projects?
Okay, not an easy question to answer. Looking at this graph, obviously this has not been done in one day or in a year. I think it took a total of 5 years. So I think this is a very relevant questions that people may have. Okay, when should I implement a tool? When should I implement an ERP, for example? And also, should I prioritize between, okay, I need to implement an EPM billing solution and an ERP? So the way I would try to answer this is to say, maybe we should take a step back and, to quote Simon Sinek, start with why. Why are we doing all this? What are you trying to achieve in some sense? So this helps to prioritize as well what you want to work on by understanding, first off, what are the issues that you have currently in your organization. There's no one answer. I will not tell you should work on order to cash or P2P or whatever. This depends on your organization, the current tool set, and all the different topics that you have ongoing. So I would recommend going by processes, understanding the level of risk that you have currently. Do you have a risk tied to a process that could kill your company? If you're not able to process the invoices and the payments, you don't have cash inflows, this could kill your company, right? Spend management is critical. I don't think it can kill your company per se, right? But it's super important for the efficiency. Maybe taxes can take a huge toll in your company. So I'll take an example here, but we implemented Avalara, that you can see on the top right here in the diagram, because in the US at Aircall until 2020, we didn't know that we had a lot of liability taxes that we're supposed to collect and give back to the government. And those started to pile up. And I will not reveal the number. It was a very big number of dollars that we didn't know we owed to the government. So looking at the complexity of the US taxes, this is where we specifically chose to fast track Avalara to be, in room, maybe be aligned on the collect and the funding and the taxes. So this was critical for us. This was a big risk in terms of liability. So this is the first step. Like, what is the biggest risk in your processes? The second one is, where do you think you can get the most efficiency as well? Which process? For Aircall, this was definitely order to cash. Thousands of customers everywhere, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe for other people, you have a company where your customers are enterprise, so you don't have many customers. So the order to cash is very easy. And instead, you should focus on, say, the spend management, the P2P. You don't have control on the level of spend. So maybe you should implement a PO system, a PR system. So this is, again, depending on your industry and your company. Or maybe you're really struggling at understanding the data and you cannot do forecasts, you cannot do models, you cannot explain the variances. This is where maybe you should start with either BI tools or the EPM, which here is adaptive insight, but it can be an EPM. So this is about the how to prioritize. This is a framework that I'm trying to use it at Aircall, level of risk and where to get efficient by process. And I would say in terms of timing, and this one, I mean, I wouldn't say it can be controversial, but I feel like it should always be as soon as humanly possible. And I'll try to explain why. Obviously, there's money constraint, there's bandwidth constraint, but when you remove this, it's so hard to secure resources. It's so hard to have a project that will be released on time. It always takes longer than you expect, right? And also, if you scale, if your company grows, by the time you have implemented your tool, maybe it's going to be obsolete because your company is way bigger. So if you factored all that in, I would recommend starting as soon as possible by order of priority that I suggested below. And this is something, for example, that we did our Aircall when in 2019, so we didn't even have an accounting solution. We're starting from scratch. We had external accountants in the US and in France. We're consolidating using Excel. That was it. So question from the previous CFO was to say, okay, I want to internalize accounting. Should we use an accounting solution or should we go straight to the ERP, which was more expensive? And the thinking here was to say, well, we will need an ERP sooner or later. When you see the level of growth we're expecting, it's a matter of time. Maybe it's going to be 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years. However, it would be way cheaper to implement an ERP now than in 5 years if you start from an existing system. It's harder to go from, say, nothing to an ERP than from an accounting solution to an ERP. So hence, sometimes if you have, the budget, and if you think that you're scaling hard, maybe you should try to go quicker and incorporate tools that may seem over-engineered because it's going to pay dividends over the long run. And for example, for NetSuite at Aircall, I think was the best decision we made.
Cool, thank you. And so kind of in the same lines, when you think of the architecture of the tool stack, I think there's like this one debate, right? Is it best in breed, or are you going more for convenience with a unified platform? How do you approach this kind of eternal debate?
Yeah, no, great question. A lot of people may have this question, and this is going to be my take because I don't think there's a single answer to this. In my view, specifically for finance, we have to be a little bit careful because the level of scrutiny that people, be it the board or auditors or upper management, will have on your data, your processes is really, really high compared to, say, I don't know, other functions. So I'm saying all this because, in my opinion, all the data flows that are critical in terms of maybe accuracy, for example, that your transactions, they have to be 100% accurate. They cannot be 99% accurate. So if the data is critical or if there's a lot of volume to it, in my opinion, there's a lot of value to have unified systems and preventing some inconsistency in the data if you have multiple systems. Whereas maybe if your data is not as critical, I think it's okay. You can take the best in breed, right? So the dunning, for example, here at Aircall, we chose a solution within NetSuite. I'll be honest, I don't think it's great, and maybe we should have taken an external solution because it's okay if it's only 99% accurate, but if there's a kind of issue. However, I think probably the best decision we took in terms of architecture is to say, we know we're using Salesforce, we know we're using NetSuite, and for our billing solution, let's cut the middleman. There are tons of solutions that are great, that do some subscription billing, I don't know, like the ChargeBee, Stripe billing, Chargeify, Recally, Zurora, all those names. Those tools are great, but we had so much volumes, was so complicated that we decided to, again, cut the middleman, do the configure price quote in Salesforce, and all the billing, invoicing, and payment connectors within NetSuite. So here, for this specific process, we chose kind of the unified systems, because thanks to this, you have only one single connector between the two systems. And instead of having, if you have three tools, then you have two connectors, that are bidirectional to maintain, which is extremely complicated. So I guess that would be my answer, depending on the criticality of the flows, as much as possible, unified for some specific processes. When you can afford it, you can take the best in breed.
Gotcha. Thanks, Paul, for that. I see that, Roshan, you just asked a question in the chat. As a reminder, there's a dedicated Q&A tab where Paul will be answering your questions at the end of the session. So please make sure to drop your questions in there, upvote your favorites, and we'll get to those at the end of the session. So on to the next question. Right now, obviously, cash is tough to come by, so it's important that you can prove an ROI of your tools. So how do you measure the ROI and justify these costs to your stakeholders, especially right in the current context of the economy?
Okay, very interesting question. And I'm sure a lot of people, again, have this question. So first off, as an FP&A guy, I'm a bit careful sometimes about ROI calculation, because it's very easy to have a model that would output any number. Still, with that said, I think specifically if you want to have a new tool in 2023, it's even more important than in the past. You need to be able to justify that this will have a positive impact for the company. And usually that means there should be a bottom line impact, right? Tools are not meant to be better looking or whatever. Ultimately, it's to get more efficient or to provide services you're not able to do at the moment. So in my opinion, this is something we're trying to do at Aircall. Not trying, we're doing it. For any new tool request, a business case is requested to explain in details why this would provide benefits to the company. And when possible, this is being reviewed by the finance team to check that it kind of makes sense as well, on top of the usual checks from security, IT, etc., in terms of implementation. So I would really recommend this, unless you're in like a very, very tiny company, to take the time to go and do those business cases that should be scrutinized by as many people as possible. Right? This is not only a finance decision, in my opinion, should be a little bit more transversal. And for renewals, because I think most tools right now are SaaS, like this, it's subscription based. We've done something recently at Aircall. This is managed by the IT department. The Chief Information Security Officer implemented a process that's great. I really love it. It's basically whatever the name, right? But it's meant to be for renewals 3 to 6 months before the renewal of a tool. It's not just for finance, by the way, it's for all the tools of the company. The business leader has to come to similar people as the new tools and explain basically how is the tool being used at the moment, what is the plan for the renewal, can we be making savings, yes, no, are there any alternatives, etc. So there's kind of a checklist that you need to go through to justify that the tool is still needed. And in my opinion, this is very, very healthy to be done, because first off, companies change, maybe the priorities they change, so this is normal, but the landscape as well changes. And maybe, in my opinion, NetSuite for the moment is great, and maybe in 10 years there'll be something better, I don't know, right? Again, the landscape just changes so quickly. So those processes for new tools, you do build a business case. For the renewals, you have this process with the committees. In my opinion, is very effective.
Cool, thank you. On to the next question. Obviously, 2023 was the year of AI. And there's a lot of people that are really interested with the potential it brings to tooling. Have you considered this kind of emergent technology to enhance your tool stack? And if so, how have you approached it, or how what would be your philosophy in approaching AI when it comes to finance tooling?
Yeah. There's a lot of buzz around AI, and rightfully so. By the way, I'm not an AI expert. Again, so take it with a grain of salt. So right now, we haven't considered it too much in 2023 for Aircall. Doesn't mean that we're not thinking about this. I think what is a bit specific for finance, maybe compared to, again, other departments, is if you look at the current technologies of AI, maybe the one that the biggest breakthrough this year is the generative AI, right? So this one right now is not able to achieve a level of accuracy that is good enough for some of the finance processes, right? So, I mean, again, if you want to be audited, if you want to build maybe models, etc., forecasts, where you can understand the underlying assumptions, etc., it's really hard to justify using kind of a black box that will output something that is not giving always the same result. So for the moment, we're kind of being a little bit careful. Also, I want to say that for the moment, for finance tools, I don't think that there are that many tools using AI successfully. It will come for sure. Uh, this is just a matter of when. So the way I see it is definitely AI will take more and more importance in the finance tools. It's going to take maybe a little bit more time than for the rest of the departments, the functions where salespeople, they already have those cool AI tools, right? We don't have it in finance. This is kind of unfortunate. But something that hopefully, there will be a big push very soon. I think it's happening right now, maybe next year, is specifically on the EPMs. So all the planning tools, basically, I think all the existing incumbents are investing heavily into building those AI modules to basically help you get more efficient, specifically in understanding your results. So instead of saying, okay, I mean, Looker, Adaptive, whatever, I'll build new reports, and then, oh, my boss asked me what are the new sales by region and why is North America, not performing well. Oh, I will create this new report. Maybe you could just ask the tool instead. And if it's properly set up, properly implemented, I'm pretty sure that very soon we'll be able to do this. So maybe there are some EPM editors in the call, like Pigment, whatever. You can hear me out and you can make it happen. But so more seriously, I hope it's going to happen maybe next year, the year after, where you have those chatbot, you'll be able to ask questions. So I think for finance leaders, directors, instead of having all those analysts building those graphs, reports, etc., you'll be able to get the answer on the go, which is going to be really amazing. So one last thing here is, I think it's easy to scoff at the generative AI, maybe how it's maybe not useful yet for finance, but should be careful to not get behind the curve. This is happening, right? Anyway, so it's a matter of when. So I think everybody should take some time to look at the different technologies, maybe play a little bit with ChatGPTs or the different tools at the moment, because those will start being implemented into the tools we're using today. Most likely the NetSuites, the ERPs, the DPMs will have such chatbots or search bars or however you call it, and we'll have to know how to use it in the future, because it's going to be a huge differentiator in terms of efficiency. So yeah, basically, a long story short, haven't looked yet. I think it's going to be amazing, and we just need a little bit more time to see the breakthroughs in finance.
Cool. Thanks a lot for that. So now, rounding out the questions, we have two more questions before going into the Q&A part of it. Hindsight is 2020. So when you look back on building out your tool stack, what is one thing that you would have done differently?
Yeah. So looking at this image, I'm quite happy. Maybe I think where we potentially failed is, first off, a project is only successful if you're able to use the tool and maintain it once it's go live. So this is where, for the zone advanced billing module that you see within the NetSuite box, I think we worked really hard internally, and I worked on this as well, to implement it. do the go live, and then we didn't think about what was coming next. So we actually struggled for months to maintain it because it was quite complicated. We didn't have basically the right setup post go live to support such a tool. So definitely I would do it entirely different today, making sure that we have the right team, the right resources to be able to maintain such a tool. Because a lot of those tools that are complicated, usually you need some kind of administrator that should be outside of finance. So this was a major screw up. So now it's getting better. We have IT people to manage it. So this is great. I think maybe the second failure, which is kind of still ongoing, would be on the adaptive insights, the planning tool, which, I mean, the problem is not the tool. It's, I think, the setup we had to implement it. Project started at the beginning of the year, and you'll see that it's not fully rolled out at the moment. Apologies. And also, we don't have all the integrator connectors, rather, with the different tools that we would have wanted. And this is because of the project structure. Apologies. So, looking again, that this is where I think it's really important to have IT leader or leaders that really know how to manage an IT projects from end to end, and I can tell you the best practices so that you make sure that all the different steps from the scoping until the closing are being managed properly, or else you have a risk of doing exactly what's happening right now, which is we're not really using adaptive insights like we should. So, you're paying for a tool that we're not using. This is kind of a failure in some sense. So this would be, I guess, maybe my 2 cents here. Really, really think through all different steps. Don't hesitate to ask people to get help on how to achieve a project until the very, very end, unless you want a tool to be a failure.
Cool, good, definitely good learnings there. And now to wrap it up, one final question. So this is kind of like asking a parent to choose maybe their favorite child, but what is your one tool you can't live without? Maybe it's a tool that you don't have in your tool stack. It's a tool that you aspire to have. But yeah, what is a tool that for you is the core of everything you do?
Oh, okay.
Feel free to name names. Like we're agnostic here, so if you can call out any company in particular.
Sure.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm not being paid by everybody. Just so you know, you're not being paid by NetSuite as well or anybody. So no more seriously, I love all these tools. I think they're all great about what they're doing. I would say that NetSuite for us has been a game changer because of how modular it is and how central it is in our stack. So to be honest, we could not really live without it today because it's doing everything for us. It's doing the coffee for us in the morning. Also, I would say maybe in terms of tool, which I'm pretty impressed, and this is not only a finance tool, but Looker, I'm really impressed. One, it's set up correctly, having this capability to explore the data. I mean, it can kind of drill super deeply without the help of anyone from data. I think this is extremely powerful. Now, in terms of maybe what tool I would want, this is Christmas is coming soon. Maybe someone wants to do a gift for me. No, to be honest, the tools maybe I'm pretty impressed about. I'll mention Pigment because I had a demonstration about the tool. I think it's very, very powerful. Modeling seems very good. So this is the kind of tool that make me think that we're going to the next step in terms of what you can achieve in terms of modeling and automation for finance. But there are plenty of such tools, right? On the payment side as well, I mean, I think there's so many things changing on the payment and the billing. Like every day, I feel like there's some kind of new tool that's being out there. So all the tools that are kind of agnostic of your structure, I think are pretty impressive. So I had a discussion with Primer, I think it was 1 or 2 years ago, where they're saying it's a bit like Process Out and Go Carless. Here they're saying we'll be the middleman between yourself and all your payment service providers, no matter who they are, no matter your infrastructure. So again, I think this is kind of the future for me as well, is you can plug APIs everywhere. You can have some some kind of rules without no code rules that you can input. So I think this is extremely powerful. And for the billing as well, I think there's a kind of a new generation of tools that is coming, where similarly it's way easier to create your own business rules without needing developers or anything, and that can adapt to your own business. So yeah, I mean, this seems like most of the tools that have existed for a while, but there's a new generation coming. It's going to be coming very soon.
Awesome. So thank you for that. So thank you, Paul, for kind of running us through kind of your thoughts and tips and tricks when it comes to tooling. We will now spend the last roughly 15 minutes answering questions from the audience. We already have a bunch in the Q&A section. So we will just go based on the questions that were most voted. So Anonymous, thank you, Anonymous, asks us, how do you make sure to reduce your SaaS spend?
Okay, didn't talk about this one. That's a good question. And we did have a provider to help us on this. I know there are a ton of tools or services that help you make savings, and they're great. They're great. So I think depending on the size of your company and the resources, you can definitely use such services. I don't remember the exact name. I think there's one called Vendor, maybe like Invertis, stuff like this, right? I think we use the services of Welly in France until very recently. Those are great. I think they basically what they have is usually their value add is that they should know kind of the price points for each vendor you're using, because they have this database of everybody that's using such solution and how much they're paying. But I don't feel like they're necessary. Like if you're bigger, maybe you can afford to have a procurement department. So actually built one beginning of 2023 at Aircall, someone that's dedicated to going through all the vendor list, making sure that you're optimizing your procurement processes, making sure that they're negotiating the best price, making sure that at renewal you're not getting some kind of increase, etc. Their full-time job to optimize the spend. You don't have to be a big company to justify it. I think we hired one where we're around maybe 100 million AR, and to be honest, we could have had one way earlier, and it would have been worth it. So all the solutions are great to make savings, or else procurement department. I think it's kind of old school, but it works.
Cool, thank you. Next question from Anonymous. When it comes to adaptive insights, which is on the bottom right of the diagram, do you use it for the complete company budget? Is it flexible enough to fulfill all your needs and requirements you have on the business plan, coming from complex but flexible Excel models?
Okay, thanks for your question. So first off, we're not using adaptive insights properly at Aircall. So I would recommend maybe finding people that are actually using it. So, I mean, it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of true at the same time, where we're kind of struggling to use adaptive for what we want at the moment because we haven't invested enough time. So we're still using Google Sheets that are extremely flexible for most of the budgeting and most of the reporting. With that said, I mean, the tool is good enough. So you can build your budget inside. You can do some forecasting, some rolling forecasts, some dashboarding. The entry cost is a little bit maybe more significant than what people may say, like the vendor or the integrators. And I would recommend having someone dedicated to maintaining the tool and enriching it, because it does take quite a lot of time. So I don't know if this answered your question. I don't think it's super easy in terms of collaboration to have the budget owners go into the tool to populate information. I haven't really found a way to do this for the moment. So I think it's either imports, I mean, you have data connectors. For the output, though, providing reports and dashboards to budget owners, I think this is fairly powerful.
Thank you, Paul. The next question is, how do you speed up the closing process so that the team can spend more time on valuable analysis?
Yeah, so we have a controlling department dedicated to the close, working with the FP&A team, obviously. First off, I'm really lucky because at Aircall we have a VP of controlling and accounting coming from a very big group, so she knows about standards, best practices, etc. So we have a closing calendar that we share together, where we say, whatever steps, whatever processes, at what day it is supposed to be done, and we use just Monday.com to track this. So this is kind of a project management solution. Good thing is collaborative, so we know at any point of time for each step of the closing process what is the due date, what is the deadline, and basically the status and who's supposed to work on the task. So closing calendar, we didn't reinvent anything. I think it's quite powerful, and you want someone to manage it, to update it every single month, and to share it. So this is done directly by the VP of controlling and by myself to my organization. So you need to be fairly granular, in my view, if you want to be closing on time. But with this, I think we managed to close the P&L at around D+5, and the balance sheet at maybe D+8, something like this, which I think is very good. With that said.
Cool, thank you, Paul. So we're coming up to the end of the session. We'll take about 2 or 3 more questions, then we'll wrap it up. From Anonymous again, how much effort of data engineering, data flow automation, data architecture should be spent in the beginning of a tool's lifetime? And then the second part of the question is, how far should and can this be shifted to the back?
Oof, tough question. Now I'm a finance guy, so I like tools. So obviously, I think someone like an IT experienced professional would be better suited to answer this. It depends in some ways, because sometimes it's very hard once the tool's live to retro engineer some data flows. So I think from the get-go, sometimes you have to do it. So it depends again on the size of your company and the volume of the data we're talking about, and the criticality as well. So looking here for Aircall, the flows between Salesforce CPQ and NetSuite, from the get-go, we said, no, it has to be automated. This is too important. There's too much volume. I'm sorry, we have to do it manually. Whereas, say, for example, for the banks, until very recently, it was fully manual, because we don't really need the data every day, right? So it depends on how often you need the data. We need maybe once a month. We can do the bank statements. We'll load them to NetSuite. This is good enough. So maybe, I would say criticality of the data and how often do you need it to be refreshed, and does it need to be synchronous or not? Should the data be live, or can you wait until it be postponed for a while without impact on the business?
Thank you. Question from Moritz. So thank you, Moritz, for this question. How many of the connectors are provided by the tools, and how many did you actually build on your own in your tool stack?
Yes, okay. So the custom connectors, the one that we built ourselves, go cardless to NetSuite. There's one missing, but process out to NetSuite as well. There's the Salesforce CPQ to NetSuite as well. That is, we're using a third party called Celigo, but we still worked on this because it's still custom for Aircall for each of the flows between the two systems. And similarly between Aircall Stack and NetSuite. And I think all of the rest is basically embedded by the vendor. Looking at JP Morgan, they have a connector in NetSuite. Navan, I believe they have a connector with NetSuite, unless I'm mistaken. Adaptive Insights, similarly, like the integrator had already some kind of out-of-the-box connector with NetSuite. So it's kind of a half and half overall. Obviously, now every time looking at a vendor, first question is, are you integrated with NetSuite? Because we know that if it's not, we have to build it ourselves or find a third party, and then it's going to cost more money.
Gotcha. Thank you, Paul. So we'll take one more question, and on the topic of NetSuite, Anonymous is wondering, why did you go with NetSuite in the first place? And were there any vendors that you were considering at the time that you chose NetSuite?
Yeah. So this is when I talked about how we ruled out accounting solution because we wanted to go to a cloud ERP from the get-go. I think the contenders were SAP by design, unless I'm mistaken. And I believe that back then the Microsoft solution, I don't remember the name, didn't really exist. So we had those two solutions. We looked at the integrator landscape within Paris. This is where we found that the NetSuite integrator landscape, basically it was more mature. You had more choice as well. There were different companies providing this kind of services. Compared to SAP by Design, where I don't know, maybe one integrator back then. We didn't really feel strongly about them. So ultimately, even though the tools, they looked similar, pure in terms of features, we ended up with NetSuite.
Cool, thank you, Paul. And so that will do it for the very last webinar of 2023. I want to thank Paul for taking the time out of his, I'm sure, very busy end of year budgeting planning to speak with us, share us in very detail the tool stack. So Paul is on our Slack group. If you have any questions, you can always just ping Paul on Slack. Hopefully that's okay, Paul. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, sure. That's okay.
Awesome, cool. So if you have any further questions, you can ping him on Slack. And if not, you can probably find him on LinkedIn as well. As a reminder, if you're not part of the community, CFO Connect is free to join. We put on webinars like this every month. We have a Slack community, and we have other kinds of resources that you can thumb through. We will be sending a recording and a replay of this session, so you'll be able to watch it kind of at your pace. So keep an eye out for that. And again, thank you for everybody for coming into tuning into this one. Thank you for all the questions. We really appreciate it. We had a really nice turnout today as the last webinar of the year. And we wish you all happy holidays and a really nice end of the year. And if you enjoyed this session, please let us know as well, and we'll make sure to do more similar sessions. And with that, we wish you a very, very good night, and we'll see you in 2024. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.